This show has been brought to you by Smith's Detection and the National Air Traffic Controllers Association.
My voice is the voice that guides you home safely each and every day.
24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
I am the voice of the safest and most efficient airspace in the world.
I have to be 100% of the time.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a professional air traffic controller.
Welcome to another AAAE One-on-One. Today we're privileged to be in the office of Congressman Sam Graves, Republican from the 6th District of Missouri. Congressman Graves is a key leader on the defense side through his service on the Armed Services Committee, and importantly for us, a leader on the Transportation Committee. He's the chairman of the Highway and Transit Subcommittee and a key leader on the Aviation Subcommittee. He's a commercial rated pilot with 4,500 hours of time in the air. Congressman Graves, thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely, thank you.
So I do want to get to FAA reauthorization, but before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about infrastructure financing and development. That's been a key topic with the administration and with Congress here over the past 18 months or so. I mentioned your service on the highway side, you're a leader on aviation, so you're really in the middle of a lot of these debates with Congress. How do you rate the work that Congress has done here over the past 18 months or so to advance the notion of investment and focus on infrastructure?
Well, the House has gotten quite a few things done. In fact, we've gotten the FAA reauthorization out of the House. We've gotten the WRDA bill, which is the Water Resources bill, out of the House. We are now working on a framework for the President's infrastructure package, kind of putting together the that basic design on what we want it to look like moving forward, and then we'll start putting some more finishing touches on it later in the year, first part of next year. So the House has gotten quite a little bit done.
I want to dig in just a little bit deeper to that notion of doing some legislation on the President's infrastructure package. We've seen principles from the administration that have merged, various pieces have shown up in budget documents, but Congress hasn't really taken a shot at developing a specific proposal. You talked about that. What do you think the plan is going forward for that package? First part of the question. Second part is, do you see an aviation piece fitting into that?
There will be an aviation piece, but we have done some of that already in the appropriations bills with the $1 billion for the next 5 years going directly to airports. That was kind of part of that jump start that we were doing with the $20 billion overall for infrastructure in general. So we are doing a little bit of those infrastructure packages within some of the smaller reauthorizations. And then in the bigger infrastructure package, we will have an aviation component to it, but it'll be more geared towards so many other things too, whether that's broadband or water systems, sewer systems, highways, that sort of thing. But it will be a very comprehensive package.
Well, on behalf of the people we represent, the airports, I want to thank you for your leadership in getting that $1 billion. FAA is now in the process of outlining how they're going to get those dollars out the door here over the next 3 years, and maybe some more money behind it in the 19 appropriations bill. So thanks for your leadership on that. As you look back at the FAA reauthorization bill, which you mentioned had passed the House, what are the key parts of that you were most proud of? I know you took a lead on a lot of pieces of that. There was some controversy about ATC reform along the way. You were a voice in that debate. As you look at the House bill, what do you think are the biggest pieces of that are positive?
Well, there's a lot of things in there. I mean, a lot of things that we touched on, a lot of little things that are out there too. We dealt with TFRs surrounding air shows and sporting events. We have some stuff in there trying to address the pilot shortage. We're working on stuff for avgas. We're working on hangar use, trying to develop some guidelines when it comes to that. Aircraft registration, being a part of that. Block grants, doubling the number of states use the block grant system for airports, which is a part of that. So there's a variety of things outside of just reauthorization itself that's going into that. And then we're also doing some oversight stuff too on cost analysis when it comes to next gen and incorporating next gen into our system, finishing next generation air traffic control and that sort of thing.
So one of the questions everybody has is that bill has now passed the House and the Senate has passed something out of committee, and everybody's waiting to see when when it is the Senate might take up its version of FAA reauthorization. From a process standpoint, when you look at the calendar, the Senate's going to be in the last couple of weeks in August, which gives it more time on the clock. But with the programs expiring at the end of September, how realistic do you think it is that the Senate can get its work done and you can get something conferenced into the President by the end of September? Is that realistic in your view?
I don't know if we can do it by the end of September, just simply because now we've got the Supreme Court nomination that's coming up. That's going to take a little bit of time. You know, McConnell had hoped to get floor time in June for the FAA bill in the Senate. That never happened, obviously. You know, July, we're coming up on the end of that process, or the month. And then we've got the August break. They're going to roll right into appointments in August. So I think we can get a lot of it done. I'm hopeful that we're going to get floor time in the Senate in September. We should be able to conference it fairly quickly. We're doing a lot of pre-conference work even as we speak. So that'll happen. You know, I would like to see the end of October. I am optimistic we will get it done this year. I think we'll get it done before the election. But I think we'll have a very short-term extension before we're able to totally finalize.
So if it gets through the Senate, you mentioned the work that the House and Senate have kind of done. They're not major areas of policy disagreement between the two approaches. So if it gets through the Senate, you think it'll roll pretty quickly? It'll
roll pretty quickly. And in fact, if we saw it in the first part, if it hit the floor of the Senate in the first part of September, we could have it done before the deadline. That is a possibility. You know, I'm not as optimistic about that, but it is a distinct possibility.
So you mentioned some of the things that are in the House bill. You will obviously, if it gets to that point where there's a conference, you'll be a critical voice in that debate. What are your key priorities for a final FAA reauthorization bill, assuming we have one?
Well, all of those things that I talked about, I would like to see them done. You know, I want us to see us address the pilot shortage, or at least how we count hours towards that 1,500-hour rule for right seaters. You know, that is a very big priority as far as this. We also need to be thinking about, too, how we handle the capacity. We're going to see 1 billion people going through airports in the next few years. You know, we're already seeing more capacity than we ever dreamed of in our lives. And we have to be thinking about that, and we have to, you know, make sure that we give airports the tools that they need to be able to, you know, do those expansions to accommodate those individuals, all those customers, people moving through the airports. You know, everything in this country moves. Everything moves, and aviation is a huge part of that in the United States. You know, we have the freedom to be able to fly anywhere we want, and we have to be able to accommodate all those people that do want to fly anywhere they want.
Yeah, no, that you've hit the nail on the head from our perspective, the airport community. You know, you add another 300 million people on top of the already crowded terminals, runways. So again, we appreciate your leadership on getting resources to airports for those items. I want to talk a little bit on the workforce development issues. You mentioned the pilot shortage, and I want to dive into that just a little bit further. You've also introduced bipartisan legislation dealing with aviation mechanics and broader aviation workforce issues. Tell us a little bit about that bill.
Well, you know, one of the things that we are trying to address and look at is, you know, how we capture those young people and get them interested in aviation overall. You know, whether that is as an administrator or, you know, a mechanic or a pilot. Aviation is not a cheap area to go into either. So we're looking at a variety of ways to try to make it a little easier, a little more affordable, obviously, for individuals trying to find an aviation career. Also trying to address, you know, when you talk specifically about pilots, you know, we have an issue with the 1,500-hour rule. I've always had an issue with that. It's not about the quantity of the hours. It's about the quality of the hours, and I think we're doing it completely wrong right now. So we're taking a look at all of those things, but we want to get those young people interested in a career in aviation. That can be anything that touches aviation, and trying to, you know, nudge them through the process.
Right. On the pilot shortage specifically, you've been a leader in trying to advance some common sense reforms on the 1,500-hour rule. Fair to say that that's very politically contentious and not easy to get done in the context of an FAA reauthorization bill. When you look broader, what advice do you have for industry, or what role do you think industry can play on that issue, in particular the pilot shortage? And do you see any enhanced role you'd like to see DOT or FAA take with regard to that issue?
I would, and a lot of it has to do with the way we count those hours too. There are certain credits that we should be allowing. We should be doing more simulator work too, which is obviously much more affordable than actually flying an airplane. Plus, you can simulate things that you can't simulate in an actual aircraft. It's just too dangerous of a situation to try to simulate those things. So we need to be using more simulator hours and how we count those hours. We also need to be giving credit for those individuals who have been doing other things in aviation and being able to count those hours. But I also believe too that we need to. I think that 1,500 mark is it's arbitrary. It makes no sense to me. It should be lowered. There are people out there with 20,000 hours that I'll never fly with, and there are people out there with 300 hours. I'll get in the cockpit at any point. It's about the individual themselves, and it's about the quality of the training that they have received and how they handle themselves in an emergency situation. So I would rather see younger pilots, with say that 500 hours or so, sitting in the right seat, learning from a very competent captain in the left seat, rather than sitting in a 152, boring holes in the sky, just trying to build hours to get to that point. That's not good training. Good training is bringing them through the process and putting them in that situation that they're going to have to work and operate in, and with somebody that is very good at it and very experienced at it.
Before we let you go today, we've talked an awful lot about what we're seeing here over the next couple of months as Congress looks forward to a midterm and getting out of here and all those things immediately on the agenda. Looking forward to next year, the next Congress, there's a retirement at the top of the Transportation Committee. Chairman Schuster has obviously announced he's not going to run for re-election. That creates an opening at the top of the committee. I think it's no secret that a lot of people are going to look at you as someone who should be interested in that role. I know you've expressed an interest in that. As you look forward to the future of the Transportation Committee, what are some of the priorities you'd like to see the committee tackle in 2019 and beyond?
Well, there's a lot of things. One of the biggest of which is how we incorporate technology into our future transportation system. And it doesn't matter if that is aviation or highways and the unmanned vehicles that we're going to have, and how we incorporate those into the airspace, for instance, or on the highways, and how we, and how we're thinking too in terms of what we need, to be looking forward. In terms of, as we build runways, as we build terminals, or as we build highways, how are we going to, what are we thinking in terms of what we need to do to be able to allow those, those operations? That's wide open, and there's so much opportunity there as well, but we want to be safe about it. So technology is probably the biggest thing the next chairman is going to face. Also funding. We want to make sure that the Aviation Trust Fund stays solvent and plenty of money there to build airports. The Highway Trust Fund the same way. I think my experience, the time that I've been here, and my passion for all things transportation, is what uniquely qualifies me for that role, and I'll be actively seeking it and going after it.
Well said. With that, we'll thank you again, Congressman, for taking time to be with us. It's a busy time on Capitol Hill. You've walked through just a handful on the transportation side. You got a whole lot on your plate. So thanks again for your time and for your leadership.
Absolutely. Thank you.